I am sitting here in my beautiful new apartment, looking at my brand new gaming setup that I built entirely with my own money. The RGB lights dance across my custom mechanical keyboard, and my dual monitor displays show exactly what independence looks like. But just 18 months ago, I was living in my childhood bedroom, trusting my family, completely believing that blood meant loyalty. I had spent 2 entire years saving every penny from my part-time job to build the gaming PC of my dreams. It was not just a computer to me, it was proof that hard work pays off, a symbol of everything I had accomplished on my own. But I never could have imagined what they would do to fund my little sister's shopping addiction. Before I tell you how my own family betrayed my trust in the worst possible way, I would love to know where you are watching from, and if you have ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect. Please hit that like button if you are ready for a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about unconditional love. And do not forget to subscribe, because this journey gets darker before it gets better. Growing up in suburban Ohio, I was always the responsible one. My name is Allison, and at 24, I'd already established myself as a freelance software developer with a steady income and a bright future. But my story really begins 8 years earlier, when my parents brought home my baby sister, Madison. After multiple miscarriages, my mother, Linda, finally carried a pregnancy to full term, and Madison became what everyone called the miracle baby. From the moment Madison arrived, the family dynamic shifted completely. My parents, Linda, who worked as a registered nurse, and Robert, who was an accountant at a local firm, poured all their attention and resources into their precious youngest daughter. Madison got the largest bedroom in the house, the one with the walk-in closet and bay windows that overlooked our backyard garden. Meanwhile, I was moved to the smaller room at the end of the hall. When Madison turned 5, she received her first iPhone, while I was still using a flip phone that I had bought myself with babysitting money. As Madison grew older, the preferential treatment became even more obvious. She got brand name clothes from Justice and later from American Eagle, while I shopped at thrift stores and clearance racks. When she wanted to join gymnastics dance classes and art camp all in the same summer, my parents found the money without question. When I asked to attend a computer programming camp that cost half the price of Madison's activities, they told me I was old enough to get a job and pay for it myself. The justifications were always the same. "You are older, Allison. You should understand. Madison is still just a child. She needs these opportunities. You are more mature. You can handle disappointment better than she can." I heard these phrases so many times that I started to believe maybe I was being selfish for wanting equal treatment. By the time I graduated high school, I had learned to rely only on myself. I worked 25 hours a week at Best Buy while maintaining a 4.0 grade point average. I saved every dollar I could living on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches so I could pay for my computer science degree at the local state university. My parents helped with Madison's college fund, but told me that student loans would teach me responsibility. After graduation, I decided to stay living at home while I built my freelance development business. This decision would prove to be both the best and worst choice I ever made. The best, because it allowed me to save money rapidly. The worst, because it put me front and center to witness the complete transformation of my little sister into someone I barely recognized. The gaming PC project started as a dream during my junior year of college. I'd been using an ancient laptop that took 5 minutes just to boot up, and I knew that to succeed in my field, I needed proper equipment. I researched every component, meticulously comparing prices and reading reviews for months before making any purchases. I wanted an Intel i7 processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and an RTX 3080 graphics card that would handle both my development work and the gaming streams I planned to start. For 2 years, I worked extra shifts at Best Buy, took on additional freelance projects, and saved every birthday and Christmas gift from relatives. I ate lunch at work to get the employee discount on computer components, and I slowly acquired each piece of my dream setup. The total cost came to $2,800, which represented thousands of hours of my labor and countless sacrifices. The day I finally assembled everything was one of the proudest moments of my life. I spent 12 hours carefully installing each component, managing cables, and configuring the software. When I powered it on for the first time and saw those beautiful RGB lights illuminate my custom build, I felt like I had accomplished something truly meaningful. This was not just a gaming PC, it was a tool for my career, a platform for content creation, and proof that I could achieve anything I set my mind to. Madison, who was 14 at the time, immediately became fascinated with my setup. She would hover around my desk, asking why I needed such an expensive computer when her MacBook could play games just fine. I tried to explain the difference between casual gaming and the kind of development work I was doing, but she just rolled her eyes and complained to our parents about how unfair it was that I had the cool tech while she had to make do with last year's iPhone model. Madison turned 16, just as social media culture was reaching peak influence, and unfortunately, she fell hard for the luxury lifestyle content that dominated her Instagram feed. She began following dozens of fashion influencers who posted daily outfit photos featuring designer handbags, limited edition sneakers, and makeup collections worth thousands of dollars. What started as casual browsing quickly became an obsession. The first major incident happened on a Saturday afternoon in March. Madison stormed into the kitchen where our parents were having coffee and announced that she absolutely had to have a Coach handbag that cost $400. She had seen it on her favorite influencer's story, and according to Madison, everyone at school was carrying designer bags now. She could not possibly show up to junior prom season looking poor. For the first time in Madison's life, our parents said no. Robert explained that $400 was too much to spend on a purse for a 16-year-old, and Linda suggested that Madison could find something just as pretty at Target or TJ Maxx. Madison's reaction was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. She threw herself on the kitchen floor, sobbing and screaming about how her friends would mock her and how she would rather die than be seen with a cheap knockoff bag. The tantrum lasted for 3 hours. Madison refused to eat dinner, slammed doors throughout the house, and sent dramatic text messages to her friends about her terrible parents who apparently hated her. By bedtime, Linda was researching Coach bags online, while Robert calculated whether they could fit the purchase into their monthly budget. Over the next few weeks, Madison escalated her campaign. She created elaborate PowerPoint presentations showing why designer accessories were actually investments. She printed out articles about the importance of self-esteem during teenage years. She even recruited our Aunt Sarah to call and lecture our parents about not stunting Madison's social development during such a crucial time. The breakthrough came when Madison discovered she could monetize her fashion obsession. She created an Instagram account called Madison's Style Diary, where she planned to post daily outfit photos and eventually attract sponsorship deals from clothing brands. To make this work, she explained she needed a constant rotation of new trendy clothes and accessories to photograph. I watched all of this unfold from my bedroom, where I spent most of my free time working on client projects and building my own social media presence around coding tutorials and gaming content. My setup was generating real income through freelance contracts, Twitch streaming, and YouTube ad revenue, but my parents seemed to view it as an expensive hobby rather than a legitimate business venture. The tension in our house grew thicker each week. Madison's demands became increasingly bold, and our parents' resistance became increasingly weak. She wanted $300 Nike Air Jordans because her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend had them. She needed a professional ring light and camera equipment for her Instagram content creation. She absolutely had to have a complete skincare routine featuring products from Sephora, because proper lighting would show every blemish in her photos. One evening in late April, I overheard my parents having a heated discussion in their bedroom. Linda was crying about feeling like a failure as a mother because Madison seemed so unhappy all the time. Robert was frustrated about their credit card balances and worried about how they would pay for Madison's senior year expenses, plus college applications. They talked about fairness and wondered whether they had been too hard on me over the years or too soft on Madison. During this conversation, I heard my mother say something that chilled me to the bone. Maybe we should ask Allison to help out more. She makes good money now, and that expensive computer setup just sits there most of the day. Madison could really use that desk space for a proper vanity area. Robert agreed that I seemed to spend money on unnecessary things, while my younger sister had to do without basic teenage necessities. That night, I lay awake realizing that my parents saw my hard-earned gaming setup as dispensable luxury rather than essential work equipment. In their minds, Madison's desire for designer clothes was more valid than my need for professional-grade technology. The computer that represented years of sacrifice and planning was nothing more than a space-wasting toy that could be relocated if Madison needed the room. The breaking point arrived during a family dinner in early May. Madison had been dropping hints for weeks about wanting to redecorate her bedroom with a larger vanity area and better lighting for her Instagram photos. She complained constantly about having to do her makeup in the bathroom mirror and claimed that poor lighting was sabotaging her content creation goals. During our meal, Madison casually mentioned that my gaming setup would look much better in the basement, and she could really use my desk and corner space for a proper beauty station. She had already picked out a Hollywood-style mirror with LED bulbs and a white lacquer vanity table that would match her bedroom furniture perfectly. When I firmly stated that my computer equipment would not be moving anywhere, Madison's face crumpled into her signature wounded expression. She launched into a speech about how I was selfish and unsupportive of her dreams, while she had always been nothing but loving toward me. According to Madison, a good big sister would want to help her achieve success and happiness. Robert immediately jumped to Madison's defense, saying that I should consider being more flexible since I was doing well financially and could easily afford to upgrade or replace my equipment. Linda added that family meant making sacrifices for each other, and they were disappointed in my unwillingness to help my sister during such an important time in her life. I tried to explain that my setup was not just for gaming, but was essential for my work and income generation. I detailed how I used the high-end graphics card for video editing, how I needed the processing power for running multiple development environments simultaneously, and how the streaming setup was building my professional brand. None of this seemed to register with my parents. The conversation ended with Madison storming off to her room and my parents giving me disappointed looks while clearing the dinner dishes. I realized that no matter how successful I became or how responsibly I managed my money, I would always be seen as the child who should sacrifice for Madison's happiness. 2 weeks later, I had to travel to Chicago for a 3-day business meeting with a potential client who wanted to discuss a major web development project. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I had been working toward, and I was excited about the possibility of landing a contract worth $20,000. Before leaving, I had a conversation with my parents about house rules during my absence. I specifically asked them not to go into my room for any reason, and reminded them that all of my computer equipment was both expensive and essential for my livelihood. I even went so far as to lock my bedroom door, something I had never done before, because I had a nagging feeling that Madison might try to borrow something while I was away. The first 2 days of my trip went perfectly. The client meetings exceeded my expectations, and I was confident about securing the contract. I texted Jake, my boyfriend of 8 months, who worked as a game developer, about celebrating with a gaming session when I returned home. He was excited to try out a new multiplayer title that had just been released, and we made plans to spend Friday evening exploring the virtual world together. On Thursday evening, Jake sent me a concerned text asking if everything was okay at home. He had not seen me online for our usual gaming session the night before, and when he tried calling my Discord, nobody answered. I assured him that I was still traveling and would be back home Friday afternoon, ready to dive into our gaming plans. Friday morning, I wrapped up my final client presentation and drove the 4 hours back to Ohio, feeling accomplished and optimistic about my future. I had successfully landed the $20,000 contract, received praise for my technical skills and professionalism, and proven to myself that my freelance business was sustainable long-term. When I pulled into our driveway at 3:30 in the afternoon, I noticed that Madison's car was not there, which was unusual since she typically came straight home from school to work on her Instagram content. I unlocked the front door and called out a greeting to my parents, but the house was silent. A note on the kitchen counter explained that Linda was working a double shift at the hospital, and Robert was showing properties to clients until late evening. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, exhausted but happy to be home. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, then froze completely. Where my gaming setup had been just 3 days earlier, there was now empty space. My custom-built PC dual monitors, mechanical keyboard, gaming mouse, webcam, microphone, and LED strip lighting had all vanished. Even the surge protector and cable management system were gone. For a moment, I stood there trying to process what I was seeing. The rational part of my brain suggested that perhaps someone had broken into our house and stolen my equipment. But as I looked around more carefully, I noticed that nothing else in the room had been disturbed. My laptop was still on my nightstand. My jewelry box sat untouched on my dresser. Even the cash I kept in my desk drawer was still there. I spent the next 20 minutes searching every room in the house, thinking maybe my parents had moved my equipment somewhere for safekeeping. I checked the basement, the garage, even Madison's room, but found no trace of my $2,800 gaming setup. By 4:30, I was sitting on my bedroom floor, staring at the empty desk where my pride and joy used to sit. When my parents returned home that evening, I was waiting in the living room, with my arms crossed and my heart racing. The moment Robert walked through the front door, I demanded to know what had happened to my computer equipment. His face immediately flushed red, and he began stammering about how they could discuss it after dinner. Linda attempted to redirect the conversation by asking about my business trip and whether the client meetings had gone well. I cut her off mid-sentence and repeated my question about my missing gaming setup. The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. Finally, Robert sat down heavily in his recliner and admitted that they had sold my computer. He explained that a buyer on Facebook Marketplace had offered $1,800 cash for the complete setup, and they had decided to accept the offer while I was away. According to Robert, this was actually a good deal, since I had paid $2,800 originally, and computer equipment depreciated rapidly anyway. The money, Linda continued, had gone toward purchasing items that Madison needed for her upcoming junior prom and her 18th birthday celebration. She had finally gotten the Coach handbag she wanted, plus a pair of limited edition Air Jordan sneakers, a complete makeup collection from Ulta, and several outfits from Nordstrom that would photograph beautifully for her Instagram account. I sat there listening to this explanation, feeling like I was hearing a foreign language. My parents had sold my work equipment, my income-generating tools, my pride and joy, without my knowledge or consent, and they were presenting this as a reasonable decision that benefited the family overall. When I asked how they justified taking something that belonged to me and selling it without permission, Robert became defensive. He claimed that since I lived in their house, rent-free, they had the right to make decisions about expensive items that were taking up space and potentially creating security risks. Linda added that I was perfectly capable of buying replacement equipment, since my business was doing so well. The conversation took an even darker turn when Madison arrived home and joined the discussion. Instead of showing any remorse or understanding about what had happened, she seemed genuinely confused about why I was upset. She pointed out that I could easily build another gaming setup with my next few client payments, and in the meantime, she had been able to complete her spring wardrobe in time for all the important social events coming up. Madison actually pulled out her phone to show me photos of herself wearing the new clothes that had been purchased with money from selling my computer. She scrolled through dozens of Instagram posts featuring her Coach bag, her Jordan sneakers, and her professionally applied makeup. Each photo had received hundreds of likes and comments from her classmates, proving that the investment in her image had been worthwhile. When I pointed out that she was showing off items bought with stolen money from her own sister Madison, looked genuinely hurt. She accused me of being dramatic and selfish, unable to celebrate her happiness or support her goals. According to Madison, a loving sister would have offered to help fund her transformation instead of hoarding expensive toys in her bedroom. My parents nodded along with Madison's perspective, emphasizing that family members should prioritize each other's needs and dreams. Robert suggested that maybe this situation would teach me about the importance of being more generous with my resources. Linda added that they were disappointed in my reaction and had expected me to show more maturity and understanding. That night, I lay in bed staring at the empty corner where my computer setup had been, just 4 days earlier. I realized that this incident was not an aberration or a mistake, but rather the logical conclusion of 24 years of being treated as a secondary family member whose needs and accomplishments mattered less than Madison's whims and desires. I understood for the first time that my parents would never see me as an equal deserving of respect and basic consideration. In their minds, I existed to support Madison's happiness and success, not to pursue my own goals or protect my own interests. The computer they had sold represented far more than money or equipment. It represented my autonomy, my hard work, and my right to exist as an individual, rather than just Madison's older sister. By morning, I had made my decision. I was going to move out immediately and establish firm boundaries with my family. I would no longer accept being treated as a resource to be exploited whenever Madison needed funding for her latest obsession. If they wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be based on mutual respect and recognition of my worth as a person. I called my best friend Sophie before my parents woke up Saturday morning. Sophie had been my roommate during college and now lived in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown where she worked as a graphic designer. When I explained the situation, she immediately offered to let me stay in her spare room until I could find my own place. By 9 in the morning, I was packing my belongings into boxes and suitcases. I had been saving money aggressively since college, so I had more than enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on my own apartment. My freelance business was generating consistent income, and I had just signed the $20,000 contract from my Chicago trip. When my parents realized what I was doing, they tried everything to convince me to stay. Robert offered to compensate me for the computer when their next paychecks arrived. Linda cried and begged me not to abandon the family over a material possession. They both insisted that I was overreacting and throwing away important family relationships over something that could be easily replaced. Madison's response was the most telling of all. She genuinely could not understand why I was so upset about a computer when she had been dealing with the trauma of not having the right clothes for months. She accused me of loving my gaming setup more than I loved her, and claimed that my decision to move out proved I had never really cared about our family. I spent 3 hours loading my car while my parents alternated between guilt trips and angry lectures about responsibility and loyalty. Robert threatened to cut off all financial support and remove me from their health insurance policy. Linda worried aloud about what the neighbors would think when they found out their daughter had abandoned her family. As I packed the last box into my trunk, I told my parents that I loved them, but could no longer live in a house where my possessions, my boundaries, and my autonomy were not respected. I explained that when they were ready to treat me as an equal family member, rather than a resource for Madison's benefit, they could call me, and we could work on rebuilding our relationship. Linda sobbed on the front porch as I drove away, while Robert stood behind her with his arms crossed and his jaw set in anger. Madison watched from her bedroom window, probably already planning how to redecorate my empty room for her vanity area. The first month living with Sophie was both liberating and difficult. I felt guilty about leaving my family, even though intellectually I knew I had made the right choice. Sophie helped me process my emotions and reminded me that healthy families do not steal from each other or treat one child as more valuable than another. I immediately began shopping for components to rebuild my gaming setup, but this time I chose even higher-end equipment. My business was thriving, and I deserved to treat myself well after years of sacrifice and careful budgeting. I also invested in a high-quality security system for my new apartment, ensuring that my possessions would always be safe. Meanwhile, my family began experiencing the consequences of my absence. Linda had been relying on my help with household management and tech support. Robert had assumed I would continue contributing to family expenses, even while living at home. Most importantly, they realized that Madison's expensive lifestyle was unsustainable without my indirect financial contributions to the household. After 6 weeks of silence, Linda started calling me daily. She would cry about how much she missed me and beg me to come home for family dinners. Robert left voicemails offering to replace my gaming setup with an even better one if I would just move back and pretend nothing had happened. The most surprising development was Madison's gradual change in perspective. Without my presence to absorb our parents' attention and resources, she began experiencing more restrictions on her spending. When she asked for $500 for a summer wardrobe refresh, our parents told her the family budget was stretched too thin. When she wanted to attend a music festival that required expensive tickets and accommodations, they suggested she get a part-time job to earn the money herself. For the first time in her life, Madison was hearing the word no on a regular basis, and she did not like it. She began reaching out to me with awkward text messages, asking when I was coming home and whether I was still angry about the computer situation. I responded politely, but maintained my boundaries about not discussing reconciliation until the family dynamics changed significantly. 6 months after moving out, I was thriving in ways I had never imagined possible. My freelance business had grown to the point where I was turning away clients and considering hiring an assistant. I had built a gaming setup worth $3,500, featuring the newest graphics card technology and a streaming quality audio system. My apartment was decorated exactly to my taste, and I had complete control over my environment and possessions. More importantly, I had learned to value myself appropriately and maintain boundaries with people who tried to take advantage of my generosity. I realized that the guilt and obligation I had felt toward my family were actually symptoms of an unhealthy dynamic that had been damaging my self-worth for years. When Madison turned 18, she called me directly for the first time since I had moved out. She apologized genuinely for not understanding how important my computer had been to me and for supporting our parents' decision to sell it. She admitted that she had been spoiled and entitled, and that experiencing real financial restrictions had taught her to appreciate things she had previously taken for granted. This conversation marked the beginning of a slow rebuilding process between Madison and me. I agreed to meet her for coffee occasionally, but I made it clear that our relationship would be based on mutual respect rather than the old dynamic where I existed primarily to support her needs. My parents took much longer to understand what they had lost. Robert eventually admitted that selling my computer without permission had been wrong, but he continued to insist that I should have been more understanding about Madison's needs. Linda struggled with accepting that I was genuinely happy living independently and did not need their approval or support to thrive. Today, I maintain limited contact with my family. I send birthday cards and attend major holidays, but I have never moved back home or returned to the old patterns of self-sacrifice and accommodation. I learned that love does not require you to accept disrespect or abuse, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to show them the consequences of their actions. My gaming setup now sits in my beautiful apartment, where it is appreciated, protected, and used daily for both work and entertainment. More importantly, I have built a life where my accomplishments are recognized, my boundaries are respected, and my worth is never questioned. The lesson I learned from this experience is that family should lift you up, not tear you down for their own benefit. Sometimes the greatest act of love for your family is teaching them that love is not supposed to hurt, even if that lesson costs you everything you thought you knew about home. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and self-respect? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and please share your own experiences with setting boundaries with difficult family members. If this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button to support my channel, and do not forget to subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama and finding your own path. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people who claim to love them. Thank you for watching, and remember that sometimes moving forward means leaving some people behind, and that is perfectly okay.